Welcome in, everyone. Today's deep dive is, well, frankly, a bit of a nail-biter. We're going to be looking at MeasureMatch, a company that's recently announced that they're on the hunt for a buyer after a really interesting few years.
Yeah, it's true. It's actually kind of a fascinating case study of how quickly things can change in this business, even when you've got a solid foundation and you've had some real success. MeasureMatch, for those who maybe haven't heard of it, got its start back in 2016 with what seemed like a pretty simple idea at the time. They wanted to make it easier for businesses to connect with the right experts to get those tricky technical projects done.
Okay, so break that down for me a little bit. What kind of tricky technical projects are we talking about here? And who are these experts that they're connecting?
So think like software implementations or like major data management projects, analytics, stuff like that. The kind of work where you really need people with specialized skills, often a whole team to really pull it off. And MeasureMatch basically built this platform where businesses could, it's almost like they could post their needs and then get matched with consultancies, systems integrators, even individual consultants who had the exact kind of expertise that they needed.
So kind of like a matchmaking service, but for businesses and their tech needs.
Exactly. A matchmaking service. That's a really good way to put it. And they were doing really well. By 2024, they had this network of over 12,000 buyers and sellers and partners all over the world. And they have some really impressive success stories, like Wow Bao, the restaurant company.
Yeah, vaguely. Don't they make a really good bell bun?
That's the one. They were really struggling to kind of wrangle all of their data, They knew that there are insights in there somewhere, but they needed someone with the right experience to kind of pull them out. And that's where MeasureMatch came in. They connected them with these data experts who helped them to actually build out their data infrastructure so they could access all those insights that they knew were in there.
Okay, so it's not just about finding an expert. It's about finding the right expert, the perfect match for the problem you have.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And another great example of this is Save My Exams. It's an education company, and they were practically drowning in customer data, but they had no idea how to use it to make their product better or to really understand what their students needed. But MeasureMatch was able to connect them with this team that helped them to totally revamp how they thought about data, how they used data.
Sounds like they were on a roll. So what happened? Why are they suddenly looking to be acquired?
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is where it gets interesting. In 2020, they decided to kind of lean into the software side of their business, and they launched this thing called the Partner Exchange.
Partner Exchange. What is that? All right, so we've got all these businesses with their mountains of data, and MeasureMatch is over here like the tech matchmaker, making sure everyone finds their perfect data partner, and then this Partner Exchange thing pops up. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the Partner Exchange, this was all about bringing software vendors into the mix.
Okay.
You see, MeasureMatch, I think they realized that a lot of the projects that they were staffing, these technical projects, they often involved, actually using specific software. And so they basically created this online space, this exchange, where software companies could connect directly with potential partners, consultants, integrators, all these people who had really deep knowledge of their particular product.
Okay, I see. So it's like, hey, software company, we've got this whole network of people who know your product inside and out. Let's team up and make something great for your customers.
That's it. Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. It was a really smart move, strategically speaking. By bringing those software vendors together with the implementation experts, MeasureMatch was really putting themselves right in the middle of this, this whole growing ecosystem.
Right. Makes sense. But something tells me that this smooth sailing doesn't last forever.
You're right about that. It doesn't. And that brings us to 2024 and the launch of their most ambitious project yet, something called AtlasGM.
AtlasGM. Okay. That name is familiar. I feel like I've heard it before. It's like MeasureMatch, but like supercharged. Right?
Yeah, supercharged. That's a good way to put it. AtlasGM wasn't just about connecting businesses with experts anymore. It was a whole platform that was designed so that B2B software companies could run their own professional services marketplaces.
Hold on. Back up for a second. So instead of MeasureMatch being the matchmaker, they were now offering to build the whole matchmaking platform for other businesses to use.
That's exactly right, yeah. It was a really bold move, and it was definitely aimed at capitalizing on just how much the whole SaaS market was blowing up.
Okay.
Think about it like this. Software companies, they were already making a ton of money selling their software, right? But on top of that, there was all this untapped potential in their partner ecosystems. And AtlasGM It basically gave these software companies the tools to actually, unlock all that potential, to manage these big networks of experts, and even, take a cut of the profits.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that sounds like, a potential gold mine.
Yeah.
But also probably a ton of work, right? I mean, I'm thinking about it, trying to convince these huge software companies to just hand over the reins of their entire partner ecosystem. They couldn't have been an easy sell.
You're getting it. And you're right. That's where the challenges really started to pop up. Even if you've got a great product selling into these huge, really complex organizations, it's not easy. You've got these really long sales cycles. There's like a million decision makers to get through and often a whole lot of red tape.
And I'm guessing MeasureMatch, because they're based in the UK, probably had some extra hurdles trying to break into the US market, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just building those relationships, navigating the different business cultures, even just being in the same time zone. I mean, all that stuff just adds layer upon layer of complexity.
So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They've got this really ambitious product. They're trying to tap into this really difficult market. And I'm sure that, their runway is getting shorter and shorter. So what happens next? I mean, were they able to convince any of these big companies to get on board with AtlasGM?
Well, yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And you're right. I mean, they were definitely aiming high. They wanted to get those big names on board, like Databricks, Snowflake, Grafana. These are all companies with the kind of scale and the resources where AtlasGM would really shine. But those are also tough nuts to crack. And like we were saying, it takes a lot of time to make those deals happen. And I think they were starting to run out of time.
Because they were burning through their funding.
Exactly. Building a platform like AtlasGM, I mean, that takes serious cash. And even with the money they were making from their original marketplace, it just, it wasn't enough. I mean, they could have tried to raise more money, but that's a whole other, that's another beast entirely, especially when you're trying to convince investors that you can go toe to toe with these giant companies.
So what did they do?
Well, in September of 2024, they made the decision to start exploring strategic options, which, in the startup world, that's usually code for we're looking for someone to buy us.
Wow, okay. So after all that, it comes down to finding a company that really gets what they were trying to do with MeasureMatch and who believes in AtlasGM enough to, take it and run with it.
That's it, yeah. And it's not just about finding a buyer, it's about finding the right buyer, They need a company that understands the power of these partner ecosystems, a company that has a track record of being innovative and creating new things. And of course, they also need a company that has the resources to really help MeasureMatch take AtlasGM to the next level.
So what's the takeaway here? I mean, what can we learn from MeasureMatch and this whole journey they've been on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a story about ambition, about being agile and adapting to a market that just never sits still, MeasureMatch, they saw a real problem. They built a successful business around solving that problem, and then they were willing to take a risk, to bet big on something even bigger.
And I guess sometimes, even when you make smart choices and you're doing everything right, sometimes the timing is just off, or, the market shifts in a way that you can't anticipate.
That's the truth. Yeah. And I think it's a good reminder that even the most promising startups, they face an uphill climb, and sometimes success means knowing when to pivot, when to stick with it, or even when to just walk away.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the future holds for MeasureMatch. Will they find the right company to acquire them, or will they find a new path forward? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another look at the world of tech and innovation.